So when I was a white belt, I probably competed fairly regularly because that's kind of what you were doing it for. It's that kind of thrill of a match day, which I think was missing for rugby.
Yeah.
And I think at that stage, because I didn't really, I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu full time, and it was just at that point just a hobby. I didn't care about it that much, and so I didn't care if I won or lost.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite freeing. So it didn't really bother. So I didn't really think about it at that stage. And I think only as I took it more and more seriously, it became harder and harder to deal with because the results became more and more important for me. Mm-hmm. And also, especially when you start competing at white belt, the matches, I think if you're fairly athletic, and I hadn't really had any major injuries at white belt, and I was fairly young and fairly strong and fairly athletic, it wasn't much of an issue. There wasn't really any problem to it. So actually competing at a white belt, because the guys weren't very skilled, it was almost just a strength match. So it was fairly easy for me. So I found competing at white belt pretty easy. And so like I said, there wasn't a lot of pressure there. Now, for other people, some people are terrified of competition thing because it's, I suppose, simulating a fight. It can be quite terrifying for people if they've had no competitive experience before. And so, first of all, going in as a white belt, I've known people be really, really scared to go into it. You can see in their eyes they're actually quite terrified to go and do it. I think so. It's obviously going to be different from person to person, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Also, for me, I'd had, I think, 8 kickboxing matches before I'd competed in jiu-jitsu. So it's a bit of the adrenaline dump from going into a kickboxing match is very different. It's a lot more terrifying. If you feel, well, I find it more terrifying to go in and be punched and kicked in the head than it is to go and wrestle someone, which is just a fairly familiar thing. I suppose if you're growing up playing rugby or just kind of roughhousing, you're going to be fairly used to that. It seems much more natural than going and trying to kick for them daylights out of someone and have them return that. So I think the comparative difference, if you like, in jiu-jitsu, it seemed fairly easy to go and compete for me. Whereas I don't view that it's going to be the same for everyone. Certainly, if people are obviously worried about different things. Like I'm terrified of heights, so if I go rock climbing, there's a much bigger kind of pressure, if you like, to go and do that than there is to go and have a jiu-jitsu match. So, and I'm perfectly aware that people, when they come to my gym, they might never have had any physical contact with anyone before. And also they start doing it and it becomes the first thing that maybe they've done that they've actually enjoyed in their life. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to put a lot of pressure on themselves to do well when they go to competition. So not only do they have that terror of actually simulating a fight, but then they've got the terror of the internal pressure, which I think the internal pressure to do well is usually the most difficult thing to deal with. So in the first instance, I'd say go and get some experience and just see what it's like for you, see how you react to that situation, and then build up from there. So I don't know, it's maybe not the answer which people would look for, but certainly unless you've got some real data to go off, you can't really start to build a plan. So they have to feed back into each other and then make recommendations depending on how you react to the situation based on there. And I think because it's something I think quite a lot about, because like I say, when I first started at white belt, I really experienced almost no nerves. And I think by the time I got to purple belt and I really wanted to do it well, I was being sick before I walked on the mat to go and actually compete. And I think that was the match when, and it was quite new to me as well when I was at purple belt. The match when I was sick before I went on the mat, and it was only like a few minutes before I was being called and before I was being disqualified because I couldn't stop being sick in the toilet. So I think because that was a new experience to you, it's harder to deal with. So like I say, sometimes it doesn't really matter how much experience you've had, because it'll change over time as well, and so you need to adapt it as you go along. So get some data, see where, and be willing to readdress what you're doing constantly. I think it's like learning jiu-jitsu. You have to be willing to readdress what you're doing in your game in order to make the most progress. It's never going to be one shoe fits all, or even fits you all the time. Like you have to change your shoes sometimes. When you start to feel the nerves and the different kind of hormones that arise because of that, how our body well, how our mind interprets what our body's producing can be very difficult. And so, because jiu-jitsu simulates a fight, we tend to start thinking, or people start to interpret from when people are spoken to about this when they go to competition. What I try and get out of them is people start to feel that they're afraid of the other person, and often what they're feeling is a pressure from themselves, and that can be very difficult. Like, in order to interpret, like to start understanding yourself and why you're feeling what you're feeling, why you're feeling that adrenaline rush, if you like. It's not a fear of the other person generally, because at the end of the day, it's just jiu-jitsu match, and someone's going to stop you before you die, and probably before you get injured. So, if you like, it's not really a fear of that person. It's usually a fear of doing well. Now, some of it's going to be, some of it will be fear of the situation. Your body thinks you're getting into a fight, so it's a fight or flight response. But it's a bit more complex than that. And I think that's why I started, like I say, when I had that match when I was a purple belt and started being sick, it wasn't so much a kind of a fear of the other person as it was a fear of doing well in the situation, feeling like I had to perform to a certain level. So, you get to a certain level and you start to perform well, and you feel like you have to keep that performance up, or you're going to let other people down. So it's a much more complex response than just being scared of the competition, or being scared of the fighter, but again, the only way you're going to start to recognize that is through collecting that data and getting in there. So again, I think because jiu-jitsu's people don't want to feel like they're a wuss, like they don't like that feeling powerless and scared and facing all these kind of demons that come out when you receive these hormonal responses. But for your body to get used to those responses as well, you have to go through it. And also it's realizing, I think part of this is how self-talk to get yourself through these situations is very important. And in order to do that, you have to realize that there's other factors at play other than just being scared of this person or of this competition, and realizing that the pressure, just simply put, the pressure you put on yourself is going to give you that as well. So I think people can experience that, and then they get worried, and that they're just scared of it, and it puts them off, and they don't want to compete anymore, or even do jiu-jitsu anymore in some cases. And again, like it goes back to that fear, of just starting to be honest with yourself and realizing that you're not bulletproof, because lots of people like want to feel powerful, like when they do jiu-jitsu, like they're invulnerable, and it's not really the case. It's much more complicated than that, and there's always going to be people that can really bring you down, because they beat you on that day, and that's part of the benefit of jiu-jitsu is starting to realize that no one's invincible. So you have to, that's part of the process. I think realizing that's part of the process and not psyching yourself out, I think, of actually doing it. Like I say, again, really starting to get to the competitions and starting to do that is going to be the first stage in realizing how you're reacting and what you're feeling. And also then trying to talk it through with other people and realize that that's normal. It's just a normal part of the game, and that everyone feels like this.